Hi, I'm John McCarthy, president of Rockhouse Audio and Videotapes for Guitar and Bass. I'd like to take this chance to introduce Steve Gorenberg, one of bass guitar's best-kept secrets of the 1990s. His blazing bass techniques you're going to see throughout this whole 4 videotape series. Also, I'd like to take this chance to tell you that Steve also has an audio series available as a beginning, intermediate, and advanced series. And also, Rockhouse has available for you a guitar series for video and audio cassettes. Rockhouse, we have our motto that we're teachers trying to show you how to learn your instrument. We're not rock stars trying to show you how to play our songs. We want you to become your own musician, learn how to play your own style, and create your own style. So pick up your instruments, start playing, and get working hard. And I'm going to turn the mic over to Steve, and he's going to show you how to get some blazing bass techniques right now.
Hi, I'm Steve Gorenberg. Welcome to the Rockhouse Videos for Bass. I'm your bass instructor for this 4-tape series, and this is the most advanced tape, tape number 4. Now, before we get started, I'd like you to make sure that you have some of your scales down, because we're not going to be reviewing them or covering them here. This one is exclusively for the advanced techniques. You should know your minor pentatonic and major pentatonic scales. You should know your arpeggios, major, minor arpeggios, and 7th chords, and you should also know your major and minor scales. Now, on this tape, in lesson number 1, we're going to be going through the bidextral hammer-ons and the advanced rapid-fire bidextral hammer-ons, all the two-handed tapping techniques. Later on in lesson number 2, we're going to talk about the modes, and I'm going to show you how to use them to put some melody into your bass lines. Lesson number 3 will cover all the harmonics techniques, building chords with harmonics, playing false harmonics, and tapping harmonics on the neck. And then in lesson 4, we're going to show you how to play all over the neck and how to use the formula for improvising in order to be able to do advanced solos. And we'll have an example of an advanced solo so that you can see all these techniques in action. Now, before we get started, I'm just going to make sure that you're in tune to me. I'm tuned to an electronic tuner, A440. So if you have an electronic tuner, then you can tune to that and you'll be in tune with the tape. If not, here's your open 3rd string A. And I'll also play for you the 12th fret harmonic on the A string. Here's A, harmonic, 12th fret. Okay, now go ahead and look through everything in lesson number 1. We're going to get started with the eruption solo in just a minute. Okay, if you're all tuned up, we'll get ready to start lesson number 1 now. We're going to be going over the bidextral hammer-ons. And the first series of hammer-ons that we have is the last segment of the eruption solo from Van Halen's first album. Of course, this is the rave of guitar players. We're going to show you how to play it on bass. Now, I've transposed this 1/2 step down from what it is on the record, because if you have a bass that only goes up to the 20th fret, you can still play it this way. If you didn't transpose it, you'd have to have 21 frets. But if you only have 20 frets, you can play it the way that it's written in the book. Now, first, we'll go through the first measure slowly so that you can see the technique in action. You're going to have your left hand set up at the 5th fret with your 1st finger on the 1st string, and your 4th finger should be ready to play the note at the 8th fret on the 1st string. Your right hand is going to be tapping the note at the 12th fret. So what you do is you hammer your index finger on your right hand down at the 12th fret, pull that finger off to the note at the 5th fret, being fretted by your left hand, and then hammer your 4th finger down at the 8th fret. Then when you go to repeat it, as soon as you tap at the 12th fret, lift your 4th finger off of the 8th fret so that your 1st finger at the 5th fret will be ready on that note. Now, if you're not totally comfortable with the technique, just go through that first measure and get comfortable with it before you go on and do the rest of this exercise. Now I'm just going to play through from the beginning to the end of the piece at a slow speed for you. Okay, and now I'm just going to flip on a little bit of distortion and play through it for you at a fast speed. Okay, now go on to page number 3. We're going to go over the lateral runs. Let me just shut off the distortion on this. Okay, now the lateral runs, well, what a lateral run is a scale voiced out over the entire neck. Instead of playing a scale as you normally would, for example, the natural minor scale, we're going to have you play the natural minor scale straight up the neck from A on the first string at the 2nd fret, all the way up to A at the 14th fret, all on that one string. We're going to play it in a pattern. The first measure is going to start like this. Second measure, third, okay, and that's the key of A natural minor on the first string. The reason why we do this is because all of the two-handed tapping that you're going to be doing is going to be coming from scales directly. That's how you get these to sound good and use them in context, is to use the scale tones, and you can see the scale voiced out over one string, which is what you need to do for these rapid-fire bidextral hammer-ons that we're going to be getting into. Let me play this lateral run for you at a faster speed. Okay, now the second lateral run is going to be the A natural minor scale on the 2nd string. We're still going to be in the key of A, but we're not starting on A. We're going to start on the note E and travel 1 octave up to E at the 14th fret. Okay, and here's that one in the faster speed. Okay, now if you memorize the patterns for the natural minor scale on the separate strings, then go on to page number 4, and we're going to get into the advanced rapid fire bidextrals. The first one is going to be the A natural minor scale on the first string in groups of 4, starting with your index finger on your right hand at the 9th fret, and your left hand is going to do a hammer roll. So you're going to tap the note at the 9th fret, pull off to the note at the 2nd fret, have your first finger there on your left hand, and then hammer down your 3rd finger and your 4th finger. This is different from the eruption solo. It's a group of 4 notes rather than a group of 3. Let me just play through the first measure a little bit faster for you. Now you want to get this smooth and even. All 4 notes the exact same length, and make sure that you can repeat it evenly also. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to be traveling up the neck. Now the tough thing about this one exercise is that your right and left hand moves simultaneously. So you're going to have to look back and forth very quickly from both hands in order to be able to make sure that you're at the right frets. Now I'll play through the entire exercise for you at a faster speed. Okay, and now here it is one more time at the killer speed. Now moving on to page number 5, we're going to do the rapid fire trills. And this is style used by Billy Sheehan in some of his two-handed work on the albums that he did with David Lee Roth. Now on the song Elephant Gun, there's a bass solo that uses the technique that's very similar to this. We're going to start out at the 2nd fret with your first finger on your left hand, and you're going to be using your first finger at the 2nd fret and your 3rd finger at the 4th fret. Now the way that we're going to do this is we're going to alternate tap at the 4th fret. You're going to tap with your first finger and with your 3rd finger. First finger on your right hand, 3rd finger on your left hand. Now when you build this up to speed, you can really get it fast. Let me show you this building up to speed gradually. Okay, now the way that we're going to go through this exercise is that we're going to advance up the natural minor scale on the 1st string, 1 fret at a time with your right hand, 1 tone at a time with your right hand, and then we're going to follow with your left hand, then move up your right hand and follow with your left hand. I'll play through the entire thing slowly for you. Okay, now here it is one time at the blazing speed. Okay, now work out what you can with the rapid fire bidextrals and the eruption solo and the lateral runs. Now what you need to remember while you're voicing your own examples of these, which I'd like you to do, you should be getting creative with it and coming up with your own ideas. What you need to remember is how to vision the scales themselves stretched out over a string, and that's why we went over the lateral runs. Move it into a couple of different keys and see what you can do with it. And then I'll see you in lesson number 2. We're going to learn the modes. Hi, welcome back. We're going to start lesson number 2 now. We're going to be learning the modes. What modes are, they're separate scales, all built off of a major scale. If you remember, if you were with us for tape number 3, we built an arpeggio, or a chord, on every single step of the major scale. We had a 1 chord, 2 chord, starting on the first note of the scale, the second note of the scale, right on up through the last note of the scale. With the modes, what we're doing is we're taking the same notes in that key and we're building a scale off of that note. So if we were to play the C major scale, from C to C. Now if we were to start that scale on D, rather than playing a D major scale, we're going to be using the same notes that were in the C major scale, and we're going to play from D up to D. Higher to D. Now we've just created a mode of the C major scale. This is the 2 or the 2nd mode starting on D, and it's called a Dorian scale. Now each mode has a different name. They're Greek names that were used thousands of years ago, or 1,000 years ago at least, and they're still in practice today, and you'll be seeing these in guitar magazines, people talking about different modes, Dorian, Mixolydian, Lydian, and you should get to know the names of them just in the back of your head so that when you hear them, you'll start to recognize them. Now the first mode that we're going to be doing, well, we're going to be doing them all in the key of G major. The first one is called G Ionian, and it's the same thing as the G major scale. It's called the Ionian mode. The second mode is going to start on A. A is the 2nd note of the G major scale. We're going to play all of the same notes in the G major scale, starting on A and ending on A. And this is called the Dorian mode. On onto the Phrygian mode, which would start on the third step of the scale on the note B. Moving on to page 7, the C Lydian mode, which would be the fourth mode in a major key. And in the key of G, it's the C Lydian mode, starting at the third fret on the third string. Onto the fifth mode, which is the Mixolydian mode, starting on D. Now, the sixth mode is going to be the E Aeolian mode, or the minor scale. This E minor scale is the relative minor in the key of G major. We talked about relative major and minor back in tapes 2 and 3. The minor scale starts on the sixth step of its relative major. And it's a mode of the major scale, just like all of the other scales are modes. Starting on the E at the 7th fret of the third string. Onto the last mode, which would be called the F sharp Locrian mode. Now turn over in your books to page number 8. We're going to go through a modal exercise, which is going to take you up one mode, down the next, up one mode, and down the next, all the way up the neck, just so that you can get an idea of the finger patterns and the scales used here. It'll help you to memorize the scales. Now just go through the first measure with me. It's going to be starting with the G Ionian scale. Right here, slide up to prepare yourself to play the A Dorian scale. Now the second measure, we're going to go down the A Dorian scale. For the third measure, slide up to the 7th fret, and we're going to play up the B Phrygian scale. And then staying in the same place, just advance one note higher, and we're going to go down the C Lydian scale. Right here, slide your second finger to the 10th fret, so we're prepared to play the D Mixolydian scale. Slide up to the 14th fret and play down the E Aeolian or minor scale. Slide up to the 14th fret and play up the F sharp Locrian scale. And then without moving, you can play right down the G major scale, one octave higher. Now I'll play through the entire exercise for you at a little bit of a faster speed. Moving down to page number 9, we're going to talk about the key of G major first position scale. We're going to start with the note G and play up the major scale and continue up past the octave to as many notes as we can reach in this one position without sliding out of this position. One more time. Now, using this position scale, if we were to play from G to G, you have the G major scale. If we start on the note A and play right through the G major scale until we reach A again, that would give us the A Dorian scale. If we start on B and play right up to B again, that would give us the B Phrygian scale. And if we start on C and go right through using the same notes in the key of G, we would have the C Lydian scale. This is just to clarify a little bit of how the modes work. There's nothing really tricky or anything about the modes. The modes are very, very simple. All you need to know is your major and minor scales. As far as knowing the 1 mode, the 2 mode, the 3 mode, all the separate modes, they aren't really useful to you in that sense. Later on, when you start to write solos in special keys, in Dorian keys or Mixolydian keys, you might want to use these. But going over to page number 10, we'll show you some ways of using the modes to create melodic bass lines. And we're just going to be using this key of G major first position scale to do all of these in. Now I'll run a drum track and guitar track, and I'm going to play along with it to show you how this works. It's a chord change that goes through 3 times. The first time that we go through it, I'm just going to play on the root notes of the chord. The second time through, I'm going to add a couple of connecting notes from measure to measure to show you how you can connect from chord to chord using the modes. And then the third time through, we'll go and we'll add a little bit more melody to the playing so you can see how you can really use this to its extent. Okay, now go on to page number 12, and we're just going to add a little bonus in here, 2 octave scales. We'll show you how to play the G major scale and the A minor scale, covering 2 octaves, and this will help you to move around the neck a little bit quicker. Starting at the 3rd fret on the note G on the 4th string with your first finger. Slide up to the 5th fret, onto the 3rd string, first finger at the 5th fret. Now slide your first finger to the 7th fret. Up to the 2nd string, your first finger will be at the 7th fret. Now slide your first finger to the 9th fret. Ending on G at the 12th fret on the 1st string. Now I'll play through the scale up and down at a faster speed. Moving on to page 13, let's do the A minor scale, 2 octaves. Starting at the 5th fret on the 4th string on the note A with your first finger. Slide your first finger up to the 7th fret. Then first finger at the 7th fret on the 3rd string. Now slide your first finger just 1 fret higher to the 8th fret, and you have to stretch your hand out. 2nd finger at the 10th fret and 4th finger at the 12th fret. Then onto the 2nd string, your first finger at the 9th fret. Slide your first finger 1 fret higher to the 10th fret, and again stretch your hand out. 10, 12, 14. Up to the 1st string, 10, 12, 14. Okay, this one's a lot harder than the major scale itself, but you might be playing in minor keys a lot more often than you're playing in major keys, so it would pay to get this one down really tight. Let me play it for you at a faster speed. Okay, now practice through everything in lesson number 2. Learn the modes, learn what the modes mean and how to use them. You can try to play around with the modes in your playing with songs that you already know how to do. We're going to be going back to them in lesson number 4. Now get set to do lesson number 3, which is going to be all of the harmonics techniques. We'll be back in just a minute. Hi, welcome back to lesson 3. We're going to go over all of the harmonics techniques now. Turn in your books to page number 14. What we have there are a series of charts that show you where you can play all of the harmonics, and we used as an example the 1st string G. Now take the entire length of the string from the nut all the way up to the bridge. when you play this open, it vibrates in one smooth section from the nut to the bridge. The way that harmonics work is when you play a harmonic at the 12th fret, you lightly rest your finger right above the 12th fret, right above the metal bar, and then strike the string with your right hand. Now the string vibrates in two equal sections. One section is from the 12th fret up to the bridge, and another section is from the 12th fret down to the nut. And the only point on the string that's not vibrating is that one point right there in the middle of the string at the 12th fret. This is exactly half the distance. Now if we were to divide the string into 3 equal parts, which is the next chart down, and this will give you a fifth of the open string, you have one at the 7th fret, and you can also play the same harmonic at the 19th fret. And that's dividing the string into 3 equal sections. Now when we divide it into 4 equal sections, you have this one here at the 12th fret that you already had, plus a harmonic at the 5th fret, which is an octave higher than the original first harmonic at the 12th fret. You also have the other fourth of the string, which covers from the bridge to a point somewhere between the pickups and your neck. Now, in order to find these, you're going to have to come up with a reference point on your own bass. Now, I use the screw right here on the pick plate because the harmonic for that note is right below the screw. You can use other reference points like the sides of your pickups and etc. to find your way along here when you're playing harmonics up past the neck. If you continue on, the diagram will show you how to divide the string into 3 parts, 4 parts, 5 parts, 6 parts, and etc., and what intervals you'll be getting. Now, down to page number 15, we have a chart that will show you the natural harmonics as they increase in pitch from the 12th fret back to the nut on all 4 strings. Let me go through this quickly for you. The first one on the first string would be G. Then we have a fifth above that, which would be D. Then we have an octave G. Continuing on, we have a third B. Then an octave higher than the original fifth, which would be D again, but an octave higher. Then we have a flatted seventh, which would be the note F. And then we have another octave G, which is way up here. Now these tend to get harder and harder to get them to jump out of your bass. Just like the bidextral hammer-ons, if you're going to use the harmonics and the two-handed techniques in your playing, you're going to need what's called a compressor to be able to compress the sound of your bass while you're playing along with a band. You might hear these jumping out at home while you're playing at home by yourself, but when you have drums and guitar or keyboards along with you, you're just going to get drowned out as soon as you start to play the harmonics. What a compressor does is it takes all of your signals, which say encompass this much room from lowest note to highest volume, lowest volume to highest volume. It'll take it and it'll shrink it down. It will take the loud signals and bring them lower, and it'll take the lower signals and bring them higher. So you're working with an area this big. That way, when you're hammering out regular playing and you go to play the really soft harmonics, the effect will level out the volume for you so that everything will come across at the same volume. And you'll need this to be able to do these type of techniques if you're going to be playing them in a band. Now down at the bottom of page 15 we have something that you can do with the natural harmonics. You can play a B minor scale if you arrange the harmonics in the right way. Let me play through this for you slowly. We're going to start with the note B, which is the harmonic right after the 3rd fret on the 4th string. And I'll play right up and down the scale. Now another thing that'll help you to get these harmonics to jump out of the bass is if you have a bridge pickup, and the bridge pickup is the one that picks up all of the treble and high end, and also when you're using your right hand to hit the harmonics, you should be playing as close to the bridge as possible where the strings are nice and tight, and when you get a nice strike from your right hand. Down here by the neck, they're a little bit sloppier. They sound a lot tighter when you strike them closer to the bridge. Now moving on to page number 16, we're going to build some chords using just natural harmonics. The first one on the left-hand top side of the page is an E minor 7 chord. Now just take a look at the chart very quickly for a second. I'll explain to you how this works. The X's will show you where the harmonics are. The circled X is the note E, which would be the root note of the chord. And alongside the other strings, I'll have a number there, which will tell you what step of the chord the other harmonics are. The harmonic on the first string is the minor third. The harmonic on the second string would be the seventh, and the harmonic on the fourth string would be the fifth of the chord. If you want to play this as just an E minor chord without the seventh, all you need to do is just take the harmonic on the second string out of there and don't play it. You just want to play the harmonics on the first, third, and fourth strings for an E minor chord. Let me play through this chord and the rest of the chords for you so that you can hear what these sound like. Okay, and these are a little bit difficult to hit all of the notes at once. So you can play them in groups of 2 or individually. Moving along to the E7 chord. This would be an E dominant 7 chord. Moving on to the D major chord. Going down to the A7 chord, back over to the left-hand side of the page. Onto the B minor chord. And finally, the G major chord. Okay, now these are just a few examples of chords that you can voice with the harmonics. You can use the chart that was back on page number 15 and plot out your own chords using the harmonics. Just get creative with it and try to come up with some ideas on your own. Now we're going to go on to the full range chords. We call them full range chords because we'll be playing the root note as a regular note and adding the harmonics to it for the other chord tones. The first one will be a C major chord. So we're going to fret the note at the 3rd fret on the 3rd string with your first finger. Then we can add the 5th of the chord by playing the harmonic at the 5th fret on the 1st string, and the 3rd of the chord by playing the harmonic at the 5th fret on the 4th string. Okay, the next one that we have is a G major chord. So we're going to fret the note G at the 3rd fret on the 4th string with your first finger. Finally, the F sharp minor chord. You're going to fret the note F sharp on the 4th string at the 2nd fret with your first finger. Okay, and as I said before, the possibilities are endless. These are just a few examples. At the bottom of page 17, we're going to go over tapping harmonics on the neck. Now this is kind of the idea of a capo. When you use a capo on a guitar, instead of having your open strings regular open, it's like giving you an extra finger. But what you're going to be doing is you're going to be using your left hand as the capo, and your right hand is going to be tapping harmonics on the neck at their proper positions. Now if I fret the note at the 2nd fret of the 1st string, the note A, which is what's on the diagram on page number 17, if I tap exactly 1 octave higher, then I get the octave harmonic from that note. And what I've done is I've divided the string in 2 equal parts from the 2nd fret all the way up to the bridge. Exactly half the distance would be here at the 14th fret. Moving on to page number 18, there's a diagram that'll show you how to plot out the rest of the harmonic scale on this same particular note. If you go 7 frets higher from the original note that you're fretting, you'll have the next harmonic up. Continuing on. you can also use this technique to tap chords out. I'm going to fret an F sharp major chord with my left hand at the 2nd fret on the 4th string with your 1st finger, 4th fret on the 3rd and 2nd strings with my 3rd and 4th fingers, and at the 3rd fret on the 1st string with my 2nd finger. Now if I tap the entire chord configuration 1 octave higher at the 14th fret with my right hand, okay, now if we were to tap these harmonics at the next harmonic up in the scale, we would have a C sharp major chord, because you get a 5th from the original note that you're dealing with, and we're just transposing the entire chord that I have fretted in my left hand a 5th higher. Moving on to page 19, now let's talk about a technique called false harmonics, or ghost harmonics, you might hear them referred to as. If you fret the note at the 12th fret on the 1st string with your left hand, and then find the distance from the 12th fret all the way up to the bridge, exactly half the distance would be somewhere between your neck and your pickups. If you find that place and use this technique that we're about to go through, you can get these false harmonics. What you want to do is rest the tip of your thumb on the point where the harmonic should be. And then with your thumb resting there, pluck back the string with your 1st or 2nd finger on your right hand. Okay, now let's take a look at that again up close. Now turn in your books to page 20. We're going to do some chords using the false harmonics. Each separate tablature staff on the page is going to be a different chord. You should fret all of the notes that are written on the tablature staff with your left hand. And with your right hand, find the points an octave higher on your bass and play the false harmonics. You might have to hunt around for them for a little while. The first one is going to be an E major chord. Moving on to the next chord would be an A major chord. And the last chord is going to be a G major chord. Now we're going to use the G major bar chord fingering like we did when we were tapping harmonics with the F sharp chord. Just starting at the 3rd fret with your 1st finger, the same chord configuration in your left hand. Now with your right hand, you're going to be playing the false harmonics exactly an octave higher, but these are going to fall right on the neck. So if you look exactly an octave higher, the false harmonics will fall at the 17th fret, 17th fret, and 16th fret. Now let me play the entire chord for you. Okay, and using that idea, we can play all sorts of other things using false harmonics. The last thing in this lesson would be a D major scale using false harmonics. So we're going to play up a D major scale, starting on the 3rd string at the 5th fret with your 2nd finger. Then we're going to play the false harmonics in the same scale configuration, starting at the 17th fret with your right hand. And I'll play right up and down the scale using false harmonics a little bit faster. Okay, this lesson was to give you an idea of how the harmonics techniques work. I gave you all of the abilities that you can do with them, tapping, false harmonics, and natural harmonics, how to build chords with them, and how to do that. Now, what you want to do is take all of these techniques, get creative with them, have a good time with it, and see what you can come up with. Start adding these into your bass lines and your songs. When you're set, we'll come back with lesson number 4, and we'll get into an advanced solo. Hi, welcome back to lesson number 4. We're going to finish up the last tape in the series right now. First thing we're going to go through are the modal positions, so everybody turn in your books to page number 21. What these are full positions of the major and minor scales across the entire neck. We're going to start out in open position, and we're going to be doing these in C major and A minor. You have a finger chart showing you what number of fingers to use. Underneath that, you have a tablature staff with the notes C circled. Underneath that, you have another tablature staff with the same fret numbers with the A notes circled. So let's play through that. Now when you're in the key of C major, you want to use this scale as a C major scale with the circled C as your root note. When you're playing in the key of A minor, you want to use the notes A as your root note. C major and A minor are relative keys, so of course they both have the same fingerings. Now on to the next position would be starting at the 3rd fret with your 2nd finger. On to the next position, starting at the 5th fret with your 1st finger. Moving on to page number 22, we have the next position, which will start at the 7th fret with your 1st finger. Moving on to the next position, which will start at the 10th fret with your 1st finger. And finally, we'll duplicate the open position scale at the 12th fret, starting with your 1st finger. Now go through and memorize these scales. This will enable you to play in major and minor keys using the modal scales in any place at all on the neck, and you should practice moving these into other keys by playing around the root notes. Now if you go over to page 23, we have a formula for improvisational techniques that we're going to go over, and we'll use for an example an E minor 7 chord. Now the first choice note that you're going to play against an E minor 7 chord would of course be the root note, and that would be the note E, and we'll use the note at the 7th fret on the 3rd string. Now, your first note that you would want to choose to use for improvisation, which will not stray too far away from where you're playing along with the guitar player, would be the octave. And you can always use an octave along with a root note. You shouldn't have any problems with that. The next note that you would add, the most tonal note, would be the 5th. The next note that we would add to that would be the 3rd, and against an E minor chord, it would be the minor 3rd. Again, these notes are being introduced in order of importance. When you're using notes to improvise against, we're showing them to you in the most tonal order of notes. Of course, the root note would be the most tonal note to use against the chord and the octave. Then the 5th, then add the 3rd. And the next note, of course, would be the 7th, and we've just rounded out the entire arpeggio. So we've just outlined the chord that the guitar player is playing in separate notes, broken chord or arpeggio. Now if we go on and play the pentatonic scale, we're adding a couple of extra notes, or in this case we're adding the 4th, which would be one extra note to the minor 7 chord. And that would of course be your next choice of tonal notes to use against an E minor 7 chord, which would be to play an E minor pentatonic. Then we'll create the mode by adding the 2nd step and the 6th step. And the last choice that you would want to use would be to add some chromatic passing tones, which are non-chord tones, and they're tones that don't belong in the key, but they'll help you to move from place to place and from chord to chord. Okay, now to give you a better idea of how this works, turn over to pages 24 and 25, and we'll go through the advanced solo step by step. Now, what we just went over on 23, page 23, was showing that to you against an E minor 7 chord, just as an example. But you can easily do this against a dominant 7 chord, a major 7 chord, anywhere else on the neck. Now, the advanced solo starts off with an E minor chord. And the first two measures against the first chord, I'm just going to be playing on the root note. Now for the next measures, we're going to be going to a C major chord, and I'll use the octave along with the root note. Up to a D major chord where we'll add the fifth in. Onto a B minor chord where we'll add the minor third and use the root third fifth arpeggio. And this is a 2-octave arpeggio. Onto the next measure, we're going to be using, against an E minor chord, we'll be using the E minor 7 chord, or the notes that are in the E minor 7 arpeggio. The root, the third, the fifth, and the seventh. Onto an A minor chord where we'll be using the A minor 7 arpeggio. 2 octaves. Continuing on to the D major chord where we'll begin using a major pentatonic scale against the D major chord. Onto the G major chord where we'll also be using a G major pentatonic this time. Moving down to page 25, we're going to go into the E minor chord, and here we're going to use the mode. Now, if we're in the key of E minor, which we are, or the relative key G major, we're going to be using the E minor or Aeolian mode against the E minor chord. Onto a C major chord. Now, the C major chord is the 4 chord in the key of G major, and the scale that you would be using is the Lydian scale. So we're going to play down the C Lydian scale in a pattern of 3s. Onto the D major chord. Now here we're going to be using harmonics. Harmonics, bidextral hammer-ons, everything, they all work off the same principles with tonal notes, chord tones, and etc. We're going to be using the notes that belong in a D major arpeggio against this with harmonics. And a D major chord with harmonics. Onto the B minor chord, and the mode we would be using would be the B Phrygian mode. And we're going to be doing a bidextral hammer-on on this one. Up to an E minor chord. And here's where we start using the chromatic passing tones. Up to the A minor chord where we'll use an A Dorian scale. To a D major chord. Chord for the G major harmonics. Okay, now that I've got the tape all set up, I'm going to play through it for you at a slower speed. Now I'll play through the whole thing for you once at blazing metal speed. Okay, this marks the end of tape number 4. I hope you've enjoyed learning from the Rockhouse method. I certainly enjoyed teaching you. You have any questions or comments, feel free to write to us at any time at all. And if you make any tapes you're playing and you'd like to let us know how you're doing, please send them down. I'll listen to them personally, and I'd like to get in touch with you and see how you enjoy the tapes and how you've learned from them. That's it for now. Take care, practice hard, and I hope I see you in the limelight someday.